Now on my show, I often talk about music, but today I'm touching on films, and what better way to talk about this topic than James King, who we have on now. I'm warmly inviting you onto the Danny Sun Radio Show.
Lovely to speak to you, Danny. How are you today?
I'm good. How's yourself?
I'm excited. I'll be honest. I'm excited because my passion, which is cinema going, it's starting up again for us in England, Scotland, and Wales. Northern Ireland, you've got to wait an extra week, but not long to go until cinemas reopen. So that's a good thing.
I totally sympathise. Where I live by a cinema, and every day I walk past there, and it is a sad picture. So, yes, fingers crossed, everything will open up in the cinema world.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good for us as film fans, but of course, as you mentioned, it's also good for the cinemas themselves because they've had a really tough time. So it's great that they'll be able to get some audiences in, slightly reduced, of course, for obvious reasons, but at least they can open up and at least they can show movies again.
Right, exciting times ahead then. On to this survey, I guess we found that 25% of people have missed going to the big screen and planning to visit the cinema before the end of May.
Yeah, so Compare the Market have done this survey, and like you said, a quarter of us are going to be going to the cinema within the first 2 weeks of them reopening, so before the end of the month. That's a big appetite. That's a lot of people wanting to go back to the big screen. And the survey really delved deep into what we've missed about going to the cinema. And you might say, well, obviously we've missed the movies. Well, that's true. People have missed the big screen experience. 44% of people have said that. But they've missed other things that we probably took for granted when we could go to the cinema whenever we wanted. But having had pretty much a year without it, there have been things that we've missed. I love this. The smell of popcorn. 18% of people said they really missed that. And you go, yeah, of course. When you walk into a cinema, it has that unique smell. It has that warm, inviting popcorn smell. People have missed the shared experience, the collective reactions from the audience. 15% of people said they really missed that. These are things you can't get from watching movies at home. It's brilliant to watch movies at home. We're so lucky to have a lot of streaming services that have given us great films over the last year, but it's just not the same, is it?
That's true. And we've got some exciting films coming out soon, like the James Bond film. Do you reckon that's a game changer? Will that bring people back?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been moved several times over the last year. Its release date, so there's a huge appetite for it. Each time it gets moved, the buzz, the hype, the excitement gets even bigger. So now it's coming out at the end of September, and it's certainly hoped that that is the film where even people who don't go to the cinema very often will make the effort. And this is what happens with James Bond movies. This is why they are this one-off, is that they attract people who don't normally go to the movies, but they go, well, it's a James Bond movie. Of course I'm going to go and see it. It's a national institution. So it's not like anything else. And we saw that in these results. I mean, in the survey, 28% of people who were asked said that that was the film they were most looking forward to, No Time to Die. And that's 12% ahead of the next one on the list, which is the Top Gun sequel. So it was way out ahead in terms of expectation.
And you mentioned Top Gun there. That is an old film, isn't it? The original. Are we seeing these films, sequels to these old films, become relevant again?
Yeah, well, that's certainly what they'll be hoping to do, is to make Top Gun relevant again. Top Gun, the original, was so 80s, just in terms of its look and its soundtrack and everything, an iconic film from the 80s. So to try and, there's no point in trying to make another 80s movie. I think you need to make a film that feels relevant, as relevant to 2021 as Top Gun felt relevant to 1986. So it'll be interesting to see what they've done with that. This comes out later on in the year. But yeah, also there's a new Ghostbusters film. You know, another film whose original was the mid '80s, and there've been sequels and there's been a reboot a few years ago. But this is another reboot made by the son of the original director, actually. So again, it's how do you tell the Ghostbusters story, which felt so cutting edge and cool in 1984? How do you make it feel cutting edge and cool again all these years later?
And I wanted to ask, with these reboots and remakes, do people still find them watchable, or can't you just beat the original?
Well, some are great and some aren't. I mean, it's the same with any film. So I don't think you can guarantee things are going to be brilliant. But what they do, even the ones that haven't worked, what I think they do is that they will then lead people back to the original. So having a new Ghostbusters film and having a new Top Gun film is great for the originals, because all of a sudden there's an interest in them again. And people who've never seen the original Ghostbusters might go, well, I've heard about this new one. Maybe I'll go back and watch the original one. So I don't think they can ever really destroy a film's reputation. Even like Coming to America, there was the Coming to America sequel that came out on Amazon earlier this year. Again, an 80s movie originally. And it was okay. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't as good as the original one. Did it hurt the original one? No. All it did was made me realize how great the original one was. So in a way, it might even have strengthened the credibility of the original one. So I think it's, stories everywhere in plays, in movies. It's all about just revisiting, reworking, continuing, sequels, prequels. It's always happened, and I don't have a problem with it. Just make the film good. That's my issue. Just make a good movie. I don't care where the story comes from.
And the list was quite extensive. Some good titles on there. There's one more I wanted to add. Harley Quinn as well. She's always popular, isn't she? At various Halloween parties.
Is that what you've done, Danny? Have you dressed as Harley Quinn before for a Halloween party?
Not just yet. The closest I've come to was the Joker, believe it or not.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, those are great. The Marvel universe and the DC universe, where Harley Quinn fits in, are just so good for costumes, aren't they? But yeah, Harley Quinn especially, I think, because she's kind of a punky anti-hero. And Margot Robbie, let's be honest, could wear anything and look good, but she especially makes those kind of punky rags that she wears and the pink hair look really cool. And yes, she is back for a third time playing Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad. We saw her last year in Birds of Prey. And she's, that character and Margot Robbie's performance has been the real breakout character from that series. The first movie came out and the big star was Will Smith, but he's not even in them anymore. Margot Robbie has really become the main star of those films, and rightly so.
And will there be a Batman coming up? And have I heard that the Riddler will be making an appearance? A Batman villain often overlooked, in my opinion, many times.
Well, yes. I mean, we've got The Batman, which stars Robert Pattinson. And I don't know if the Riddler's in it, but yes, I mean, the Batman has this whole history of villains to revisit. It doesn't have to just be Joker and Catwoman and the most famous ones. It's the same with so many comic book adaptations. We know the big names, but the real fans will know that there are hundreds of others. There are so many different characters that can be mined for new stories. So really, it's virtually limitless. It can just go on and on.
And the streaming services as well. Lockdown has been lucrative for streaming services. But as you say, you can't beat that cinematic experience as well.
No, you can't. And what's great about Compare the Market, who've done this research, is their scheme that I'm sure a lot of people know, which is Meerkat Movies, which is, when you sign on to a deal with Compare the Market, you can get these 2-for-1 Tuesday and Wednesday cinema tickets. So essentially half price, which really helps local cinemas, helps to get people going back to their local cinemas. And yeah, it is about celebrating the experience you get from your local cinema. So much nostalgia. I still live near to my local cinema where I grew up. So every time I go back, I'm not just watching the new film, but I'm kind of reliving all the films I watched there when I was a child as well. So there is so much nostalgia with going to your local cinema.
And what categories are people still looking forward to? Romance, comedy, fantasy, adventure, are all kind of genres still appealing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even horror, people say it's so funny with horror films because there's a real blankness sometimes. People just don't get them. There are some people who just like, why would you go and see a horror film? I don't get it. But the horror fans, of course, know exactly why you would. And there's still that appetite amongst the horror fans to go and see, you've got A Quiet Place Part 2, which is sort of horror thriller. You've got a new Saw movie coming out next week. So there's still a huge appetite for that. there's still a huge appetite, of course, for family films. We've got half term coming up soon, so people will go and see Peter Rabbit 2 and Cruella. And I'm pleased to see that there's an appetite. You look at the survey of films that people really want to see on the big screen. There's an appetite for some of the Oscar-winning films that may have originated on streaming services, but are getting a second chance to be shown on the big screen, like Nomadland, for example. Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar for his performance in The Father. That comes out in June at cinemas. So, yes, it's the big blockbusters and the big genres, but also those award winners as well. We're really keen to see those.
That's fantastic. And thanks very much for talking to me today about the return of cinema. And it's exciting times to see all these the entertainment and hospitality sector opening up. And finally, I just want to ask popcorn. Do you like it sweet or salty, or best of both worlds?
But I tell you what, Danny, best of both worlds. I do not understand at all. I don't get that. It's 100% salty for me.
That's fine. Well, James King, thanks for joining me on today's show, the late night show. This will go out on. Thanks for your company.
Thanks. Have a good one.
And yourself.